Hello and welcome everyone to the first session of Appreciative Inquiry plus Visuals equals Meeting Design. I'm so excited to have you here today. My name is Heather Leavitt Martinez, and I'd love for you to take a look at the welcome slide that's on your screen. And the question that we'd like to begin this session with is, what does it look like when you are at your best? So take a look at those images and choose the one that really resonates with you when you are at your best, and share the number and why in the chat. So I love that, Makeda, you were saying number 4, you feel relaxed and grounded, tapped into the power of your breath. And I have to say that I kind of hesitated to put a person in a hammock as being their best, but I know that it's one of my very, very favorite things to do. So for me, the reason why I put it in there was because I too know that maybe I've had a long day, I did good work, but I also just love being in a hammock. There's something about feeling held and hugged and that kind of thing. So that's great. Love it.
Can you feel grounded in a hammock? I don't know, but that's what for me.
That's true. Well, actually, I feel grounded if I'm outside and near trees. So, but yeah, you're right. Without your feet on the ground, maybe not so much. Yeah, exactly. All right. Good. And Michelle, because you love your work, and 7, because you love the garden refuels you. That's great. So yeah, hands in the earth, getting there. That's fantastic. Susan, 8, feeling energized and inspired. For me, I love to climb mountains, so I feel great and at my best when I'm at the top of the mountain. And some of you may have seen this slide before if you've taken a class with me, but this is just an example of how we can put some visuals out front right away to a group. I call this appreciative visuals, and give them an opportunity to connect with that and also with themselves in terms of setting the tone. So I'm going to jump right in here and talk a little bit about today. This is the define and discover session. So we're going to go through the 5D template. And this first session, we're really going to dive deep into define and discover. And then later on, next week, we're going to do dream. I'll talk more about that, design, and then deliver. And so I'm very proud and honored to live and work on the ancestral lands of the Ute, Pueblo, and Anasazi here in Southwest Colorado. Would love to see where you're dialing in from, and we're going to do that in just a second. If you want to grab your annotation tool. Now, if you've never done this before, should be in your toolbar. If you don't have it in your toolbar, you can go under where it says you are seeing maybe my screen, view options, and then go down to annotate. And if you can find that annotate tool, you'll have a stamp tool, a little bar will show up and you'll have a little stamp tool, and you can just click a check mark or a star and then tap where you are dialing in the world. And again, that might be under more or view options, annotate. And if you're not finding it, it could be that maybe you don't have the latest version of Zoom. You can also just type it in the chat. But what I love to do about with this is to be able to show where we're all dialing in from, because we're international, meeting online. That's great. It also gives us a visual tool of a visual look of where we're at. Yes, so you might find the annotation tool if you go to the top of your screen where it says you're viewing my screen. It might say view options. You can click that and then go down to annotate. Or it might be under more, or it might simply be a button on your toolbar. And again, if you can't find it, that might just be a limitation of the version you're on. So you can just type it in the chat, and I'm happy to put that little dot where you are. I'm glad we're recording today because not everybody could be here. It could be because they're dialing in from somewhere far, far away or not a good time for them. So wonderful. We've got some folks in the United States, mainly on the West Coast. I'm in Southwest Colorado. All right, we've got someone right in the middle of Europe, or maybe it was a misclick, but that's great. And also it looks like in Spain, wonderful. Great. And I just love this as a tool because, again, we get to visually see where everyone's at. When we went from in person to virtual, we all became these flat faces on screens. So I'm just going to take a quick picture of this. And when I do, I like to give you a countdown of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Excellent. And I'll just clear that. And so you can just put away your annotation screen. You won't be needing that again. Yeah. And thank you, Makeda, for sharing where you're dialing in from. If land acknowledgements are important to you, oops, you may need the annotation screen again. I apologize, and you haven't given one before and you're not sure what land you're on, I will put this in the chat, the website. You can type in where you are and it'll tell you. And then it's important if you do decide to do a land acknowledgement, make it meaningful for you. Wonderful. Great. Okay, one more annotation. This is, I love to find out who is in the room, right? So I want to know who I'm speaking to so I can customize my presentation for the next 4 sessions. I'm curious if you pull information from your participants or if you're pushing information to participants, because that's going to make a difference in how we show up with our visuals, because we can do it both ways. But I want to just see who we have. So if you're a facilitator or a visual facilitator, I'd love to know that. You can just take your icon again. Sorry about that. I told you to put it away, but go ahead and just use that stamp tool and maybe say where you are, and you can stamp more than once. If you're pushing information, meaning you're a trainer like I'm doing right now, or if you're a scribe or graphic recorder where you're not really interacting verbally with your audience, but you're giving them visuals to look at, then go ahead and click on the push side. And again, we're going to cover all of these things. It just gives me a sense of who's in the room. And you can customize this type of thing for anyone. I mean, I'm using a lettering sketch pad here, a practice pad that I wrote this out on. You can use a sketchbook. You could literally create a slide like I did in the last one where I had the map. But you can use any background, share your screen, and then ask people to use the annotation tool. And again, this gives us a visual representation of who's in the room. We're not just looking around and seeing faces, but we're also able to see what it is that folks do. All right, so I'll take a quick screenshot. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great, and clear that out. Now we know who is in the room. Now you can close your annotation tool. Right. So why are we here? Nah, this doesn't, I don't mean for this to be a big existential question, but for our purpose for this 4-week course, we are here to learn practical applications of integrating appreciative inquiry and visuals into meeting design. And the purpose of today's session is to define the elements that we're going to be working with and get some simple icons down on paper. It can be a little scary to draw. Don't worry, we're going to do a little bit of, I shouldn't say don't worry, that's a negative, but I should say this is going to be exciting because by the time you leave here today, you're going to have a couple of icons in your back pocket. I'm going to teach you how to draw them, why you would use them, because as visual practitioners, we start out with a visual library, an icon library, and we keep building on that. And then later on, when we get into more of the design and the delivery, even though we're going to be drawing a little bit more, you don't have to do that in front of your client. I'm going to show you how to customize some templates that you can use to facilitate conversations and harvest the great knowledge that's in the room. And so, how are we going to do that today? Well, we have this welcome here. You start out by setting the tone. We're going to have some appreciative agreements, and we'll talk about how to create those. We're going to talk about unconditionally positive questions. And hopefully you have your elevator pitch done. That was part of the pre-work, and sent you a handout for that. If not, you can quickly scribble that in. And we're going to be inquiring into the positive. So we'll have an opportunity today to do a quick breakout so that you can share those elevator pitches. Some of you may be a little bit further along. Maybe you already feel really confident about speaking about what it is you do. And then also starting to use those unconditionally positive questions we're going to talk about to ask each other more about each other. And then we'll do a quick, simple draw along. So you'll want to have something to write with in a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be fancy, but if you do have markers or colored pencils or crayons, that's fine. And then we'll just do a quick wrap up and next steps is what that should say. And then I'm going to do a quick, so this is like breaking news, interruption, right? So I'm gonna ask you to consider this. One really great way so that you can both see the slide and everybody else in the room is that if you go to um, the upper right corner of your screen where it says view and you click side by side speaker, that's going to allow you to be able to see both me and the slide that I'm sharing, or if I'm sharing my document camera. But notice underneath that it says side by side gallery. And if you were to click that and then slide over hover over this little vertical white thing between uh, the slide I'm sharing now and everybody else, you'll be able to see everyone. And I should have put that click this one or this one. I actually use this top one when I'm tech hosting for other people who are teaching. So just a quick tip that allows us to be able to see everybody. And I want to thank everyone for having on your videos because that allows me and allows us to have a more authentic environment, right? So we're creating a more authentic environment for each other. All right, so really let's get back to what's that payoff for coming today that hopefully you leave informed and curious to discover more ways to include appreciative inquiry and visual tools into your work. So any questions so far about today? Okay. I like to start meetings off with a meeting principle. And a meeting principle is something we can draw it up, and I'm going to be sharing them throughout this course that will help set the tone, but also set the direction, maybe, or give people something to think about. So you've seen the agenda, well, what it is we're going to do, but now I want to kind of help you frame how we're going to go into this next part. And so there's this principle called the balcony and the dance floor from Ron Heifetz, the co-author of the practice of adaptive leadership. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you today is because there's going to be times in this session and in future sessions where you as a learner, you're going to be on the dance floor. I'm going to be giving you activities to do, and I want you to participate as a participant, right? But then there's going to be some instances where I'm going to be speaking from the balcony, where you as a facilitator, as a learner, but as a facilitator can see what it is we're learning and then look at it in a way as how can I apply this in my work? Right. So just be thinking, notice that if your learning feels stretched, or if you feel like, oh, this is getting a little intense, there's that tension. And I like to identify it as, first that's just information if you're feeling any kind of anxiety, but it also could be that you're feeling that stretch between being a participant and then being on the balcony and seeing things as how could I apply this in my own work? So you're really going to get the best of both of those things. So let's start out with some appreciative agreements. Now, again, this is where you can use the annotation tool, but this time using the text tool, I'd like for you to type on the screen here some things that we would like to agree to. Now, in appreciative inquiry, we call them appreciative inquiry or appreciative agreements. You may have heard them called ground rules or meeting rules, that kind of thing. But what are some common things that we usually either start our meetings out with or ask people to add to if we're going to have these agreements that we're going to say set the standard for our meeting? And feel free to again go to that annotation tool and then the text tool and type in there. And maybe let's do this. I'm going to take if I can, see if I can do the clear agenda. Yeah, I'm going to separate these. So make them so they're one idea per each time you type something out. Great. So we're going to move these around. All right. This is a great start. Thank you. Put cell phone on vibrate. Good, good. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is let's think about these appreciative agreements in terms of sort of positivity, right? And so, oops, appears that my slide is stuck. Here we go. Okay. So in terms of things where we say what's positive, what might be maybe negative, let's just go through some of these. Practice equity. Oops. Practice equity to the best of your ability. In terms of this, looking at it like a scale, if you see the people on the left, they're sort of gray, they're not very happy. The person at the right is like, wow, this feels really good. Practice equity to the best of your ability. Where would that live on the scale? Would it be to the left or the right? Feel free to unmute. And pointing doesn't help because I don't know which way that is. I love that. I saw a little bit of this and it was like, on my screen, it's backwards. So yeah.
I think it's on the right.
That's right. Practice equity to the best of your ability. Absolutely. Be present, be seen.
Right.
Yeah, it's on the right. And I like this take space and make space. Kind of let's put that next to be present and be seen, meaning let's step up and take space for yourself, but then step back and make space for others. Right. So if you've been talking a lot, maybe take a break and let someone else have the floor as well. And also just know if you're an introvert, I'm going to try not to call on you. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I also know that introverts usually listen for a really long time and have something really important to say because they've had some time to process that. So just know that we'll make space for that as well. All right. Unmute and ask questions. Doesn't feel like an invitation. It feels more like
A
a,
directive.
a directive. So let's kind of like put it over here. Yeah. Feel free to ask and comment. That feels a little bit more like a an invitation. So maybe these can go on the same line, but one's more to the right than the other. Put cell phone on vibrate.
On the left.
Yeah. Have a little fun.
Still, I mean, it's positive, but it's also
Don't have a lot of fun.
telling you to do it.
That's right.
There's
That's
not an
right.
invitation in it.
That's right. Good. All right. That's a great delineation. Respect and honor one another's ideas. Now you're getting into some
Yeah.
Like a
wordsmithing there.
mandate, no?
What's that?
It's
Marina?
like a mandate, no? It's like,
That's right.
do this.
That's
But
right.
it doesn't feel so gentle.
No, it doesn't.
So
Doesn't at
Heather,
all.
can things be in the middle?
Yes, absolutely. So this person in the middle, they're pretty happy, but they're like this person on the right is like beaming, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't think we have anything too far to the left. Most of them, center to right. That's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah. So yeah, in terms of relationship to one another, yes, some of these are a little bit of a mandate, but it's also create a safe space. You
Mhm.
know, someone might say, that's kind of a trigger for me. I never feel safe in a meeting. What if we were to say create a safer space? So, can we take an opportunity to maybe edit that? And then we'll ask the person, whoever wrote create a safe space. Is it all right if we say safer space? Oops, my apologies.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good. And because how do we define that, right? So,
Mhm.
So, Heather, too, when I'm looking at all these things, all of them are in a more directive mode, but it doesn't
yes,
necessarily mean that they're not an invitation,
right.
So I think it's the way that the filter through which we see the world,
That's right.
So I think, that's my thought.
Exactly. You are exactly right. Yeah. And sometimes we don't notice these, but what happens when we say, okay, here are the ground rules and somebody lists them all off? This is where people in the meeting sort of like they just check out until the meeting starts, don't they? They're sort of like,
Mhm.
okay, got it. But are we really going to do this? So, how might we change some of this text so that we do get excited about working together? Be open and curious to people's thoughts and ideas. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would happen if we were open and curious to people's thoughts and ideas? Right? What does staying open and curious to people's thoughts and ideas? So maybe we don't get the language exactly right when we put it on the flip chart or write it on the slide, but to have a discussion about that, to kind of flip that script in such a way that we feel better about coming together. And would anybody have any examples of this? Meaning something
Well,
either.
I do like what you said, staying open and curious.
Mhm.
There's,
Because mhm.
or I don't know, I mean, the whole thing could be, and I like appreciative agreements. I also like if the subtitle was, I invite you to,
Mhm.
and then you put everything down. I invite you to be open and curious. And the whole thing is, I invite you to practice equity at the best. I invite you to be present and be seen. I invite you to take space.
Could I
Yes.
amend that, Susan, and offer that we invite each other to?
Yeah.
It's kind of a
Sure, that'd be
collective.
great.
I love that. Who else? What else do you have to add to that? See, that's great. So this is where we're really getting into the agreements, right? This is like a contract. We're making a social contract with one another.
And it's just to say if it feels right for you.
Yes. Good. Yeah. If and when, right? When as well. It's not an if like this isn't a yes or no. It's like this doesn't feel right to me now, but I might feel better about it when I have a little bit more information or when more trust is built within the group. Yeah, it's not an
Yeah, I think that's good. If and when.
yeah. Okay. This is good. I see practice, practice, practice. Tell me more about that. Who
I
might
just it was
yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just I think that's the base of really learning and mastering something. It's just practice. So
Yes. Good. So one of the things I also teach is lettering. And, whenever that's something that needs to have repetitious practice. And I always say you want to practice with intention or practice for performance, right? Because you're going to practice like you're really doing it. So I'm going to throw in there, embody the knowledge, because it's not just rote practice. It's like, I want this knowledge and I need to embody it by putting it into practice. Yeah. Who else would like to build on that? The practice piece.
Well, there's the thing about practicing consistently.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I'm a big believer in embodiment. That's huge for me. Somatic practices,
Mm-hmm.
Practice consistently, so that you embody the knowledge and it becomes a habit that leads to a new competency.
Mm-hmm. Right. So now we're going from, you talk about creating a new habit and competency is now we're talking about creating a new capability, right? We have a new capability. We have a new skill set. Great. And then clear agenda. Can someone speak more to that? Yeah. Whether you said it or whether you typed it or not.
That actually came from me because I feel like when we start in a place together, we do need to have an agreement as to what we're all wanting to accomplish there.
Yes.
I use
Yes.
personality dimensions tools, and for a quarter of the people in the room, they really want to know what's happening, and they need to know. It feels safe for them to know what the plan is.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent. So what I love about this is in the beginning, I gave you that process. This is our process today, sort of our agenda of what we're going to be doing. And I'm going to give you a tool here a little bit later on how do we ask for that? How do we give the opportunity to make sure that we're really clear about what we want? Good.
Heather, can I say something about that?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I do a lot of facilitating stuff, and I ask people, I mean, I give them an expectation, but I said, you know, now put your expectations aside and be open to what will unfold. Because if we're constantly trying to have certainty and compare what it is we're learning with what it is that we know, we never have the open space to innovate something new. And it's something that I learned years ago from my coach, because I was constantly taking in information and trying to compare it to what I already knew. And she said, you'll never allow anything new to unfold if you keep doing that. And it was a huge, huge insight for me. It was like, I got it.
Would anybody like to add to that? Any tools or other things that they've learned on how to get past that? That's good. So what we know and believe is our conceptual framework, right? This is what we're operating with. And when we hear, okay, I want to know, no, and things are, just in order, we might cut ourselves off to those opportunities in terms of what might unfold. And so for me, what I like to say is, whenever you get sort of like this spidey sense, you might have a physical feeling. It might be a thought. It might be something else that you're sensing that's not by our five senses, and it might make you feel uncomfortable. That is a great opportunity to say, this is information. What do I want to do with it? Do I want to lean into it because I want to stay curious and not judge it? Or do I want to say, am I telling myself a story? What's the story that I'm telling myself because this is coming up? Where's the resistance? A couple of tools that I have found very helpful to me is the work of Byron Katie. If you know her work, where she talks about the story that we're telling ourselves, is this true? How do I know this is true? What if this weren't true? That kind of thing. So I think we being mindful of that. Well, I feel like we can keep going all day on this because you're all professionals already. So I don't know that I have anything else to teach you in terms of with appreciative agreements, but does anybody have anything here they'd either like to add or just a key takeaway so that we can move on?
Yeah, for me, it's the first time we use Zoom so much for meetings, and we never use this annotation. I'm so curious about this tool, and it's so great because it's really letting me see you and at the same time work on something without feeling I'm all over the place on screen on different tools.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And this is just a
Wonderful.
simple annotation tool. It's been in Zoom for years, yet now Zoom likes to throw in apps like Miro and Mural, and you can do it
Yeah,
through
but come
Zoom,
on,
or you
this
can
is
go
just
over here.
simple.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you
And
so much.
Good. I'm glad you like that. And honestly, it's just an extension of, or it was the beginning of what is now the whiteboard tool in Zoom. So now we're taking sort of now we're in between that dance floor and balcony approach. But yeah, it's just another
I'm
tool.
just wondering, Heather, because I don't know, sometimes people are not very technological. Do they sometimes are very, like, people use it well, or sometimes
So yes and no. So remember when we first came on, someone, might have been you, I don't know, but someone was having trouble finding it. So it's important. Yeah. So it's important to give clear instructions on where to find it, so that everybody can get there. And if for some reason someone just cannot find it, it could be that they don't have the latest version of Zoom. And so what you can do, again, and I think I invited everyone, that if you can't find it, just type it in the chat. And then either myself or a tech host or someone else can help put that on the page, because now we'll take a picture of it. And this will be a good example of how you can use this in your next meeting. Yeah.
Wonderful. And are you able to save it yourself? Yes.
Yes. So as the host, there is a save feature, though I don't always trust it. So I just take a screenshot.
Yeah.
And that's when I like to say, okay, I'm going to take a screenshot. And so I've got it all queued up, and then I'll say, I'll do a countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2. And sometimes I'll notice if people are like typing, I'll wait just a few seconds more, and then I take a shot, and there it is on my desktop. Yeah.
Nice. Fantastic.
Excellent questioning. Thank you. I love questions like that.
Heather, also, I was wondering, are you using PowerPoint?
I am using PowerPoint in this instance. Yes.
Okay,
I use lots of different.
wondering.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And these are great questions. I'm going to be showing different types of technology through the next sessions. And our final session for the deliver stage, I'm going to be showing a lot of both analog and digital ways to deliver. And that's going to be based on what you come up with for the design phase. So every time I teach this class, it's slightly different depending on the people in the room, what your needs are, and how far you want to take delivering AI and visuals. Okay,
Got it.
good. Anyone else? I love it. Okay, I'm going to clear this out. There's a little button that says clear drawings. And we're going to go to this next piece, which is what is appreciative inquiry? Now, I trust that many of you are familiar with appreciative inquiry. How many of you are actual appreciative inquiry facilitators or use appreciative inquiry, whether you're, certified or not, but you use it in some way in your facilitation? Okay, a few of you. All right. So we know that it's a strength-based positive approach to leadership development, personal organizational change. But in addition to that, besides facilitation, where else can we use AI? What are some ideas of where we could use that?
Do you mean other than what, I mean, I use it a lot in organizations.
Mhm.
But I take variations of it and use it in my coaching, in helping people to make career transitions. I'm thinking of the things I'm doing right now with it.
Yeah.
And to bring groups together that need to better, of course, better collaborate. But I might take versions of it according to what the challenges of the organization or the leaders and use it in that way.
It is so universal, isn't it?
Yeah.
So applicable to so many things. Anyone else? How are you using appreciative inquiry now?
Yeah, well, I have already a big process happening with my company, and we are supporting an umbrella organization to improve the way they collaborate and identify. And so we are going to use two tools. In one side, we're going to really use appreciative inquiry. And also we have a systems mapping team that they are going to be really mapping what like the system and the challenges, and because it's a huge project actually. Yeah. So it's organizations, umbrella, even like big.
Excellent. Absolutely. Yeah, Michelle.
I'm just learning now. This is just a beginner session for me on appreciative inquiry as well. So I anticipate it coming into virtually any conversation that I have. So any relationship you're in, it's a much more positive way of framing something without judgment. And if the way we present ourselves can rub off on others, then it can be a really positive tool.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love all of these answers because they're all correct. There's no wrong answer here when it comes to using AI. And for me, when I first started, I loved it as a concept, but didn't know quite sure how to apply it. And then when I went through the AIFT, which is the Appreciative Inquiry Facilitator training through the Center of Appreciative Inquiry, a couple of things happened. Not only did I have some really good, solid tools on the how to apply it, but it became a part of me. It set a mind shift that I didn't have before. And I realized that every conversation I was having with anyone, I was changing because of my mindset. It was a paradigm shift, and it became something that I applied everywhere. And now, whether I'm teaching, facilitating, or tech hosting, or whatever it is I'm doing, I have AI as a core to what I'm doing. And so, what is the expectation? The expectation is to use it in whatever way helps you or others reach their desired outcomes. And for a very, very long time, I was doing it what I call guerrilla style, because I may not have had a way to actually or have permission to use the AI approach. So I embodied it myself and I use it everywhere. So just know that there's no wrong answer there. Yeah.
And Heather, I was wondering, you came up with AI and visuals. I mean, for me, this is so important because so many organizations I work with today are all over the map. I mean, all over the world,
Mhm.
and they're not coming together in person. So how do I bring them together and in a way that they can participate and, almost like we're in a room and they can write on flip chart paper and all that other stuff. So I'm really interested in what you're doing.
Great. That's fantastic. I'm happy to hear that. And I'm happy that you're all here because we're going to do just that. And we're going to dive in, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities to help with that. And what I'm hearing from that, I immediately, Susan, go to design. Okay, how do we design that for what they need? And we're going to talk about the conversations that they plan on having. What are the visuals that can support those conversations, and how do those get delivered? So it sounds like you're all very knowledgeable of appreciative inquiry, and also know that it's a lifelong learning process. I myself took a new class last year on appreciative resilience, and that's deepened my work. And so just know that regardless of where you are in your journey of learning about appreciative inquiry, you're in the right place, because what it really does is it's inquiring into the appreciative aspects of individuals, of teams, of organizations, of ways of being. It focuses on the positive, what gives us life, and what helps us thrive. So, Susan, as you were talking, I thought to myself, what are some of the things that people might be challenged with when working on dispersed hybrid teams? And that is that they're constantly being given things to do, where they might think, oh, here's another thing I have to do. Whereas when I think about how I'm designing meetings and how I'm designing visuals for meetings, I want people to get excited and say, oh, I get to go to this meeting. Could you imagine helping people feel great about wanting to come to a session? So I try to do that the best I can. And I'll tell you, I learn in every single one of them. And I'm sure I'm going to learn today, and I already have, of what I can improve and take forward. So let's just dive right in, because one of the biggest questions that I had before, during, and even after I took my certification training in appreciative inquiry was, how do I write those questions? How do I make those questions AI? And so I've got 3 different types of questions here. We're going to start with clarifying. And on the left, you'll see some smaller questions. These are open-ended questions, right? Can you say more about that? Could you tell me more about that? What does fill in the blank mean to you? And what do you think that, why do you think that is, and how so? That's just one way a coach or a facilitator might ask a question without saying is a yes or no question, right? But how can we then, and you did this with appreciative agreements so gracefully, how do we then push that over to the more thriving side, the generative side of saying, what are your, or our, as a team, what are our strengths? Let's investigate into that positive. And then once we say, we're really good at this, or you might say, tell me about a past project where things really worked. What worked about that? What made it successful? And then what you're doing there is you're really starting to harvest the things that were great, that worked, and people love to celebrate. I'll give you an example. I was in a meeting just this week where the paradigm of the world, what I've noticed, and this comes from marketing people, and it especially comes from um, engineers, is that they love to look at problems, right? They're always saying, what's the problem? What's the client's problem? What's the thing that's keeping them up at night? And I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm inundated by that in marketing. And anytime I go into a place where there are people trying to fix a problem, and I just go, hold on a minute. We could talk about that all day long, or we can talk about what you've done recently that was successful, and we can build on that, and also build on what it is you want to achieve. And in all of the meetings that I've been in, we get there faster when we focus on our strengths, our skills, what worked, and where we want to go, instead of the problem. So this meeting I was in, it was a 3-day meeting. On the very first day, they started out with the problem. And I was not facilitating, I was graphic recording. So I was just doing the visual side. I had no control over the agenda. And I just went, oh, I was just cringing, right? I was like, oh, I have to write these problems down. And I timed it, and it was exactly 42 minutes into a 2.5 day meeting that someone said, can we just take a break from the problems for a moment and celebrate what we've done? And I went, that person hit a load, right? Like they were like, I am done talking about problems. And so I thought to myself, this is why I always start the meeting out with a positive. That's why I set the tone, because it helps people know that they're coming into a space where they can contribute and work and feel good about what they've done, and then they can dig down into it. I'm not saying we're never going to address problems when we use appreciative inquiry. We certainly have to. But there's a way to reframe or to set up the conversation by asking these questions. And I love this well, so we talked a little bit about the outcome. What would the best outcome be for this? But I love saying, what are the benefits? Because what happens when someone listens is that they're thinking to themselves, if any of you have heard this, WWFM, what's in it for me, right? What am I going to do with this information? And if you can then ask about the benefits of it, and someone says what the benefit is, you've just scratched that person's itch. What is it you need, right? Cool. Anything you'd like to add here, or questions about asking clarifying questions to help make them unconditionally positive?
Where there's a question, when I got certified in AI years ago with Diana Whitney, one of the originators of it. She's amazing, which I love, which is, and then I've expanded on it, but, what would you like to see more of?
Yes.
And it's a question of envisioning what's possible. And so sometimes I find with my clients, they want to get it out. So I say, okay, so just let's get it out very briefly. What's the problem? Okay, now, what would you like to see more of? And all of a sudden it's like, but it helps people to start to use their imagination. I said, based on this problem, what do you imagine is possible?
Right.
And yeah, so what would you like?
And you can't start out there because they're not ready for that. Not all people think like visionaries, right?
Exactly.
So there's a turning point. That's such a beautiful question. What would you like more of? That's part of my feedback when I give a class is, what would you like to see more of? What could you have done without? Right? It's a gentle way of saying, what did you love about this? Without saying, what did you love? Because people might have, different connotations of what that means, or that might be too big. But what do you want to see more of? That's a really easy question that can be quite powerful. Good. And remember that these unconditionally positive questions are taking those open-ended questions and forming them in a way that makes them generative so that people can then focus on that positive. So here's some process questions. Instead of saying, what's coming up for you now? What inspires you? How does this specific thing that we're talking about inspire you?
Hold on.
Oops.
Sorry, I'm in the middle of a
Hold on just a second.
meeting. But what's
There we go. All right. So really about a process. So now we've got some clarifying questions out of the way. We've got a little bit of information. Now we're going to dive into the how. What's this process? Here's some more questions. Rather than just saying, what is, maybe start to form that into what could be. What sparks the passion for, right? So moving it forward. How can you or they be more inclusive in this process or in this project? Or how can we, looking at what we're about to do, how can we make sure that we're designing for the margins? How can we make sure that everyone is included? So we're thinking about that process. And what could you or someone else do to make a more meaningful impact? So we know maybe we already know the process that comes through the clarifying questions, but now it's like, as we're getting ready to deliver this, How can we make this better? How can we make some improvements? Not focusing on the problem, but focusing again where we want to take it. What else might come up? Any other kind of questions, or you feeling a uncomfortable itch?
Heather, just I'm curious, these questions can emerge anytime during the process, no? Like we are, okay, because
Yes.
some of them are now already focused on how to get there, no? What could we do to,
So this is what's interesting, is that even though the 5D process, I have arrows that go around, that doesn't mean that they have to go in order. I'm going to teach you in order because I have a process in delivering AI and visuals in an order. But really, and I think there was an ad that the Center for Appreciative Inquiry put out one time that said, what order do you go in? And it showed all these arrows, because at any time, people need to go back. A lot of times people will be immersed in a process and then go, wait a minute, why are we doing this again? We need to ask some clarifying questions. We need to get to the true purpose of what it is we're doing here. Yeah. So yes,
and
these can emerge at any time. I've just split them up to, to add a little bit of organization, but you'll notice that some of these questions can happen in the clarifying stage as well.
And I think it's so wonderful you point that out, because sometimes it just can feel like a failure, to go back. And I also do design thinking trainings, and the process looks so clean, and then life is messy. I always say,
Yes.
like, life is messy, and doesn't mean like we don't move ahead into just these stages. We sometimes, I feel like we polish and we go back and say, okay, I need to polish this a bit more. Now I see. And that's so important. And I think it's so good that you share that with us.
I'm glad you said that, because also dividing these up into a couple of different categories is helpful. When you hear someone asking a question, they need clarity. They're asking a question for clarity, right? So is it just clarity for clarity's sake? Or wait a minute, is this part of a process? Is this part of something else? Let's really quickly, you have to decide, and you might need to ask a clarifying question first. Why are they asking this? And rather than saying, why are you asking this? Ask a unconditionally positive question to help get them there, and maybe do it with a slight slant. So we've got clarifying, we've got process, then there's solution. People love to look at problems because they think they have the answers, right? So maybe they're a little confused on the solution piece. So I love to ask that, what has worked before? And these are very short questions, mainly so they'll fit on the slide. But you might want to go a little bit deeper and say, I heard you talk about a recent project where you were very successful when it came to the metrics, but the people part lacked a little bit. So so then you can ask the questions, what worked to get the metrics right? What worked for the profit, the efficiency? Okay, what could we have done to make it better for the people? So that next time, and we've got the metrics down, right? That's repeatable, that's scalable. But what's not repeatable and scalable is exactly what you just said, Marina, and that's the messy bit, right? So how can we repeat this? So maybe we were good because a few key players pulled it off, but what are we going to do to get more people engaged and involved in the success of that? And we learn from our own experiences, and we learn from the experience of others. So if we learn that other people were successful by doing this, maybe they're modeling behaviors that we can try as well. Yeah.
So Heather, what I was going to say, Marina, I think you brought up a really good point, because, it's not, the messy part is it's not black and white, right? It's in those shades of gray and color that all this stuff starts to emerge, and being able to have, I think, a variety of questions to just pull from, or you start learning, after you kind of know all these questions, what to pull from, because the problem or the challenge or what happens then unfolds into the question you want to ask, right?
Yeah.
So,
That's
and I
right.
think a lot of times, I know when I work with organizations, they want it very black and white, but human beings don't lie in black and white. They lie in Marina, as you say, the messy part, I call it the shades of gray and the colors. So I think that's really beautiful what you said. That's great.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Yeah,
You know,
Makeda.
I'll add that what you said, Marina, and was very liberating for me in terms of my approach to AI. You know, I've used pieces of it before, the Dream and Discover, you know, AI interviews, but it always felt so daunting to push, you know, a group through the whole process. And everything I've read is like, oh, this takes, you know, all this amount of time to get them through this. And so to recognize that you can kind of move in different ways through it, opens up the structure of like, oh, I have to be in this cycle to, you know, to actually get the best out of AI. It just gets me, it kind of reminds me of what I appreciate about the reflexive model that David and the Grove use, which is like we can go back and forward and it's very dynamic. And I didn't see that dynamism in the 5D model or the 4D model because it's just like, you know, keep spinning around in a circle. So that alone is really helpful for me as I'm approaching this learning experience. So thanks for that.
Nice. That's a great reflection and a great linkage that you just made. So already I'm noticing, Susan, you're the facilitator of the group. Makeda, he's the visual practitioner of the group. You know, it's like we're going to meld these beautiful worlds, and that's going to be fun to be able to do that. And to going back to Makeda, love to talk to you either and we can talk about this in the design session or even in one of the office hours about how the 5D model is really a framework, right? And then, and I shouldn't have said model, but the 5D process is a framework and models can fit in there. So David Sibbitt's, the team dimension or the team performance model is a great model that can fit inside of the 5D process. And I'd love to show you where that lives because it's really key. It's really key. Yeah, good. Anyone else want to talk a little bit about these questions or ready to move on?
I got one more question, Heather.
Yeah.
Do we need to work with one main question or?
Excellent question. I think it depends on what you're trying to do. If you are working with, if you're putting together a summit and you want to do a cross-functional team, put together a cross-functional team or what we call a core team in appreciative inquiry, then I think it's really important to take that core group through the process of coming up with one question with the focus of that. And then you can apply that. However, it's the process of coming up with that question that they really start to embody the AI work. Right. So again, yes, I think one question can be important and it also depends on how you're applying it. So if it's we're asking one question and we want to take this to a summit and we want everyone to give all of their answers, there's lots of different ways to collect that, lots of different ways to share it, then yes. And sometimes it's about refining your ability to ask the questions in the moment that are needed. Yeah. And as some of you that are strictly facilitators or coaches, you know that it could be a series of questions that takes a person through that process, or it could be like the perfect question that just makes them sit there and go, oh, I could think about that. You know, like it resonates. It's I call it a sticky question because it resonates with them long after you've asked it. Yeah. Does anyone else have the answer to Marina's question though, because I should have actually paused and see if anybody else had some ideas. Do we only focus on one question or more questions? Guess it's easy to say there's no really right answer. And the question is, the answer would be yes. Yeah.
I think for me, it just really depends on the challenge. That's why for me, it's so important to be open to what unfolds with a group, you know, because what you think sometimes you're coming in to help the group with is not what they need. And
Yes.
so if we're open to really assessing and hearing and listening and seeing what is there, then I know a lot of times what they think they need is not what they need. And so for me as a coach, executive coach, it's to bring a different distinction and say, you know what, I think what you really need is this, and let me tell you why, you know. And I love to, Heather, what you said is I use AI as a framework. I don't know. I mean, I know it's there, but I don't always use everything there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I love what you said about saying that sometimes the client doesn't always know what they need. And
Yeah.
we need to also stay impeccable in the way we show up, in that we don't always know what they need. Like we might, like none of us may know what they need. And that again comes out of what's going to emerge,
Yeah.
right? We see things they don't see, they have information we don't have. So asking these questions is what really keeps it generative. And I wanted to share these two books. You mentioned Susan Diana Whitney. She absolutely has set the stage for so many of us. And these two books, Encyclopedia of Positive Questions and Appreciative Team Building, have some really great questions and when to ask them. And they're both really great books that you can kind of pick up like a cookbook and flip through and say, I need a question on that. You know, and there's some really great questions in there. So those are good places to start when you're starting to, like Susan said, it's like you're working within that framework. As you develop your AI muscle, if you will, it'll become very natural to you. What's your go-to questions? And you may even create yourself a little job aid, just a little card where you're writing down questions and taking that with you and testing them.
They're really quick. I
Yeah.
looked at apps. Where is the timer?
So if you go into apps, there should be a little bar that says Discover. It says My Apps or
Yeah,
Discover. If
Okay.
you go to Discover, then you can click that little magnifying glass and search and just type in timer.
Oh, I see.
Should pop up. Yeah.
Oh, I get it.
I was really kind of weary in the beginning when Zoom first started sharing and doing apps, because I know that for certain apps, they're actually mining our data. So if you're using Miro or Mural through Zoom, I don't recommend it. I didn't in the beginning. I don't know what the security is now, but this timer is really easy. Like I wouldn't worry about that one. But wherever you've got people working on projects and things like that, I'm kind of skeptical about, what kind of information Zoom is collecting about us. So I don't use those third-party tools, but at this time, yeah. But the timer is good.
Yeah, thank you.
Does
Thank you.
anybody else use different apps in Zoom that they like, they feel good about?
No,
Yeah.
it's
really
funny.
grown. Yeah.
My team, we tend to work with a lot of tools outside Zoom,
Mhm.
but I'm realizing we're not getting the most of it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it might
We're
be. That
opening
might
a
be true.
world. I'm curious if there are any useful ones. Yeah, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so I use Timer a lot. Before I had a third-party tool that I had to pay for, so I got rid of that. So that was great. And I use Zoom for video, or I'm sorry, Prezi for video, and I'll show that in probably the delivery one. But if anybody else has apps they use, feel free to put that in the chat. There's a lot there. All right, well, let's talk about these handouts. And so this very first part is elevator speech. We're going to dive into that in just a few minutes. And I think it's really important that you do this for yourself. So this is that define and discover phase about yourself. And you can then turn it, once you do it, then it's really easy to use it and turn that outwardly and use it with your clients. So focusing on your strengths and skills, how do you do your work differently or uniquely? And notice that I'm using these drawings. And so you're welcome to copy me and use them, if you wanted to make this into a flip chart. What's your differentiator? And if you had an instance where you could use that, you can use that drawing and then you can write right next to it. So you can pre-draw any templates that you have, so you don't have to draw them on the fly and wait for your client to have you finish drawing. Plus there's a lot of pressure there if you're not used to drawing, right? So I like this. Know your client, describe who your ideal clients are and their needs. And this is where I'd really love for you to complete this page, if possible, before our next office hours, so that you really get a sense of who your client is, so that when you come to office hours, we can say, okay, you've got a project coming up. Let's dive into how we can create some customized templates for you. right? So really understanding your client, and you may not have all of the answers to these questions yet, or you may not have a client you can apply these to. So maybe make up a client, your ideal client, put your ideal client, um, uh, put that at top of your mind, let that be your focus so that you can at least do sort of um, a practice run with this. So thinking of an upcoming project, you want to try adding appreciative inquiry and visuals to choose. And I do want to say, choose a small, safe project or a meeting before the big summit. Like, don't just think you're going to design a whole summit coming out of this 4-week course. And then be thinking about that dream state. And we're going to get more into that in the next session. But for now, what do you envision or hope to accomplish with your client? And what do you envision or hope to accomplish in this course? And we're going to talk a little bit about that after we practice our elevator pitches. And then in the third session, we're going to talk about design. So I'd love for you to have the pre-work done for that. There's lots of logistical things here to consider. And this is just the beginning of the kind of questions you might want to add to these. And I'd love to hear what you add to these. I really like to use appreciative inquiry to help me think of all the things, which essentially is why I've come up with 2 checklists, a design checklist. And again, we can keep adding to this, and also a deliver checklist. What are the things that I have to do before, during, after, and the follow-up when I'm doing appreciative inquiry? So with this elevator speech in mind, I'm just going to give you one for me right off the top of my head when it comes to being an appreciative inquiry and visual practitioner. If someone already knows my name, they might say, "Hey, Heather, what is it that you do?" If they don't, I might say, "Hi, my name is Heather Martinez," or whatever, or "Hi, my name's Heather." Now, literally, an elevator pitch is something that you can say quickly. Say if you're going from one floor to the next, you notice that there's someone in the elevator that you saw at a previous meeting, or you've always wanted to get to know them, or whatever. This is your time to say something in 15 seconds or less, really fast, so that you can also get to know them. And for me, my elevator pitch is, I'm a visual practitioner that uses visuals and appreciative inquiry to help professionals make their meeting more efficient, engaging, and equitable. Okay, those are 3 E words. So they're a little bit mnemonic, like they're a little bit of an alliteration there, like they kind of go together. But if you're like, that sounds boring, sometimes I just say, I help make meetings better. And what people think in their head are like, yeah, meetings kind of stink. I'd love to have somebody come help my meeting be better. Like if that's their key takeaway, that's enough, right? So something really, really simple. So what I'd like to do is, if you're open to it, I'd love to go into breakout rooms and just for a few minutes to go in, and I'd like you to share your elevator pitch. Now, here's the thing. I want you to pretend like the elevator doors just opened, you and the other person stepped in, and I want you to quickly, and this isn't what we usually do in breakout rooms. Usually in breakout rooms, we kind of wait for someone else to say something. We have to get off of mute. So you're going to go into your breakout room, you're going to hit unmute as soon as possible, and you're going to say, hi, your name, who you are, what it is you do, who you do it for, how it benefits them. And then once you both say that, because that could happen quickly, you'll probably find it a little uncomfortable or funny. That's okay. Being in an elevator with a stranger can be uncomfortable or funny. And then I'd like you to inquire. This is where you can start to ask them about what they just said. What makes you passionate about that? How did you get good at that? Can you give me an example of how that's been successful for you? Right? So inquire into that positive. And I just gave you 3 questions that were really simple, but they just kind of flew off my tongue. And I think that you're going to be listening, if you're truly listening and thinking about how can I inquire into the positive, when you hear their elevator pitch, then you'll be able to come up with a question. And it's okay if you ask them, can you say that again? Because I know you're going to be also thinking about what you're saying. Okay. So any questions before we begin? I'm going to give you 6 minutes, but here's the thing. I'd like you to say your elevator pitches, both of you, to be able to say it in the first minute total. Okay. Oh, I see a little bit of fear. How can we make this feel a little bit safer? If we all agreed to do it,
take it too serious.
Yeah. What's that?
Not take it too serious.
That's right. Don't take it too seriously. Yeah. 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 I think you're going to be in good hands. All right. And if any time you can hit the panic button and come back. All right. Okay. Here comes the elevator door and ding. Hi, Makeda. Oops. You're muted. You're muted. Did you get push button finger?
I did. You got a name for it. Okay.
Yeah. So here's what I
pushed
always
the
say.
button when I shouldn't have pushed the button. My bad on that. I was like,
It's because it shows up right in the middle of the screen. So here's what I always say. People come back early either because they're done or they've got push button finger and they just see something pop up and they push it.
Oh, I wasn't done. I was really enjoying my conversation with Susan. So
Wonderful. Oops,
you're
you're
still
muted,
on mute,
Susan.
Makeda, what I was going to say is that do most of your clients you work in person, or do you do anything via Zoom or something like that?
It's a bit hybrid right now, as folks are going back into
Right.
working. So yeah, it's a mixed bag right now. I'm still doing a fair number of virtual engagements, but I like being in the room.
Actually, that's good, because then you can work with more clients, because my clients are all over the place. So in keeping in mind people that might use your services, it will probably be Zoom would be really good. And what I think Heather's teaching us today, that's why I'm so interested.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So how was that?
I think it was great, and
Insightful.
in getting to know Makeda, it's great. I mean, I'm always trying to network.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what an elevator pitch is, right? You're trying to understand someone else very quickly, what they do, who they do it for. Does that apply to me? And then how does it benefit them? And then boom, you're already networking. Absolutely. So I'd love to hear so the first part, now you're in the elevator. How was that first couple of seconds?
I think for me, I haven't done an elevator pitch in years because I have clients that refer me clients.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but what I shared with Makeda was my purpose, my why am I here on this earth? Because coaching has been my calling. I didn't seek it out, it found me. And so in sharing with him my purpose, I don't necessarily say everything that I do, but hopefully it gives him a flavor of who I am, that he might ask questions about. What? And I find that interesting, because then I can engage them through the questions they ask.
Exactly. It's just a way to quickly say who you are. Yeah. And start that conversation. And then after you broke the ice a little bit, what was it like inquiring, using unconditionally positive questions? Did you find yourself naturally doing it? Was there a little bit of I have to think about this? Was it exciting? How was it?
Well, for me, one of my gifts is curiosity. I think that's one of the reasons why I got into coaching in the first place. And so, I just wanted to know about him and what he did, because my whole thing was that the more I know about him, the more my overall arching purpose too is to help people. So I think that gears me to ask people questions to get to know them better.
Yeah. How about others? What was that like? Michelle?
It was fun. It was good. We recognized each other from the little sneak peek that you did, which was great. And so we got a little bit more comfortable. Then we each took our turns doing the speeches, which again, I haven't done in years. That's something I did more in a sales role, having the thing I could say quickly and break the ice. This was actually much more a discovery of each other. And I think we more moved into helping each other reflect on what we'd heard said, and where that came from and what that meant. So it was great.
That's awesome. Yeah. And it's that inquiry that helps us connect with other people, right? So I have that in my head. And it's funny to hear you all say that you haven't used that in a long time. And I think people ask me all the time what it is I do. I get that all the time, but maybe Maybe that's because I travel in different places or whatever. I'm not going to like, networking meetings. I'm literally just in my everyday life, and someone will ask me, they're like, what do you do? And I don't like asking that question, because what you do for a living seems so unimportant. So I just try to make it seem really exciting. And then once they're like, whoa, really inquisitive, I'm like, what do? You just asked me. And then now we can talk about them too. So it's just a great exchange. And it's also being able to put those words, right, to that. So this is the define piece. This is the discover piece. And there's a way that we can also take it a little bit further when it comes to the visual piece. So I want to share with you just a couple of examples before we get going. Now, this might seem like, whoa, that's like a full-blown drawing. So something that's really popular amongst visual practitioners is sharing their visual self-portrait. Right. So if you want to draw a picture of yourself, and it can totally be a stick figure, and say, this is my purpose. This is what I like doing. It's a great way to put yourself out there. So in this instance, so I can put it into some context, I was part of it was a bit of a kickoff meeting on a new team, and we were all getting to know each other. And, it was one of those, let's go around the room and say who we are. And they gave us 4 things to think about. What are your strengths? What are your triggers? What is something that people sometimes get wrong about you? And what are you currently working on? And so I happen to have this drawing of myself just holding some markers. Now, I know who has a drawing of themselves, but as a visual person, you usually have a headshot that you can trace if you want to and make it a really simple drawing. I was just testing out a new app, so I did it because I thought I could use it someday. I remembered I had that. I was working on my iPad while everyone else was talking, and I was listening to them, and I went, you know what? I'm the only visual person in the room. And I'm watching them all take turns talking about their strengths, their triggers, something that's wrong about them, and what they're working on. These weren't like 30-second things. They were all talking for like 5 minutes. So I knew I had plenty of time. So I waited until the very end, and I said, well, since I'm the visual person, I thought it would be a good idea to show you visually who I am. And so I walked them through it. And they all said that they remembered what I said more than anybody else, because they had a visual something to look at while I was talking about it. And the thing that they thanked me for, and I thought this was really great, was that they now knew how to work with me because of using visuals and being able to answer the same questions they answered. They talked and talked and talked and talked, where it was like I had something to point to. So I wanted to share that as a way that you could create something like this that becomes a banner on your LinkedIn page. You could have this as part of a proposal. You could do this as a part of a way to communicate beyond just the usual elevator pitch or whatever, however else it is you're communicating. This is a little informal, though. If you feel like, oh, there's some things here that, I don't think my client would really like this, then go ahead and think of it as an infographic. So this was the first infographic that I created. I actually created this in 2014 when I first started out, after I'd had a couple of years being a visual practitioner. People didn't really understand how to use me, and I wanted to show them the service offerings, what I did. I did graphic facilitation, graphic recording, custom templates, custom everything, and then some video stuff. And I wanted to show them when and how to use that. So you'll notice that I asked earlier about how many of you are facilitators as opposed to graphic recorders. Are you pulling information? Are you pushing information? These little pie charts here are saying, how many people on a team does it take to put this together? And what that effort looks like. How many people does it impact? Does it impact people deeply, or does it impact a lot of people? And then what's the frequency in which you should use this tool? So it was a great way for me to have a visual resume in a way, and to also give them something that they can then take and use as a way to, I guess, advocate for my services. If I'm going to be a line item in their budget in a proposal, and I'm going to cost $3,500 a day, they better have a little bit more than my name and what my title is. They see something like this, whoa, she made this? This is what she does? This is cool. Let's hire her, kind of thing. So yeah.
What
What
did you
apps?
what did you do this in?
So this particular thing, I did this in probably Illustrator. So keep in mind, I'm also a graphic designer, right? So
Right.
right? Okay, let me go back. Oops, here we go. That I did on my iPad, and I use an app called Fresco. It's Adobe Fresco. It's both vector and raster. So what does that mean? A lot of visual practitioners and illustrators use Procreate. You may have heard of it. It's probably one of the most popular, but it's raster, which means you have to know before you begin what your output device is going to be and how big it's going to go, meaning it could get fuzzy and the resolution could be too low. I use Fresco because it's also vector, which means these are points and path. I can blow this the size of up on the size of a billboard and I'm not going to lose any detail. Okay. So yeah, that's what I'm using there. And we can even dig deeper into how some of those hows in the delivery stage. But
Yeah,
that's just another instance. Yeah.
Heather, so does it take a lot to learn all this?
I would love to ask Makeda. What do you think, Makeda? Because I saw you raise your hand when you said you use Procreate.
Yeah, I use Procreate. I would say it took me a good year during when COVID hit and everything went virtual. I like dove into Procreate, and it was able to like move through that learning curve because I had some visual products that I had to get out. But you got to have your hands on it. I don't know about the other one, but give yourself 4 to 6 months to get comfortable, I think, and then to be proficient. Of course, everything takes time, but it depends on your tech, how you relate to tech. I've used Photoshop for many, many years. And so the shifting to layers and understanding layers and all that was already there. So it's relative to your background experience, I would say.
So it's
Yeah.
easier to hire somebody.
So think of it this way. Do you do your own taxes or do you hire an accountant?
Right, exactly. It's better to hire someone.
Do you hire a
Makeda.
janitor or do you clean all the toilets yourself? It's like, and if you're passionate about it and want to learn it, go for it. But Marina, you had something to add too.
Yeah. From my side, I'm an illustrator and also a graphic facilitator. And but my experience is that sometimes, just to contribute to Susan, I found some tools that also you don't need to draw. Like, for example, Notability, I'm going to put it in the chat. And
Yep.
I think sometimes using icons and just using text in a very, like, we don't really need to make a piece of art to make things clear. And definitely it's great to consider hiring someone, but also I think these tools are emerging for people to be able to create, even though they don't know how to draw. And but then I love what you're sharing also about the different tools. I'm curious. I use Concepts, that is, but I don't find it so comfortable. No. Like I am more comfortable in Procreate, but then it's true that the quality of the work, if you do a video or things like that, it gets, so I use these Concepts, but I don't enjoy it. It's funny.
So I would love to take this to our office hours, because I want to geek out and I can give you all kinds of resources on how to learn this, how to choose which app is great for you, all of that. I want to, and I know our drawing isn't going to take very long because it is super simple, but I also want to be respectful of our time. So we all have a desired outcome, right? We all have a goal. And so I want to hear what yours are when it comes to this particular course. So this is where I'm going to ask you to be on the dance floor. You can certainly use this in a discovery meeting, but I want you to be on the dance floor with me for a second. Go ahead and grab that annotation tool. And I want to know, and I have it here, it says today, but I mean for this course, a high bar, low bar. So let's start with the low bar. What do you need in order to feel satisfied with the time and money and energy that you're investing in this course? What do you need in order to meet that basic expectation? And you can do one or the other or both. Your high bar is what is the best possible outcome from this course? What is going to blow your mind if you say, I got what I needed? I'm glad I invested in this course. So what's your low bar? Sort of I would say status quo. This is the minimum. And then what's your high bar? What's going to blow you away? And again, if you can put that on the slide, that would be great, using your annotation tool and your text tool. And I don't mean to minimize anybody's ideas. I'm just making them a little bit smaller so that we can fit them all in here because these are great. And I don't know why it's changing color. I apologize for that. Yeah, so the way that you can modify your text is you should be able to click your select tool and only select yours. I don't think it'll let you select someone else's. The host can do that. And then you go over to format, and there you can change color, make it bold, italic. You can change the size. But I think you have to actually, you select it, and then I think you have to double click like you're going to double click your text and then change it. So you can play with that too. And that's something we can do in the office hours too, is play around with some of this tech, because I like geeking out on text. Yeah.
I think once you click it, you cannot touch it anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, so what, you can't use your
Once
mouse
you did
or your
once you write it down, then I think you cannot I cannot
Okay.
modify it.
Okay, well, let's do this. We have an office hour this week that's on Wednesday, and on Thursday, I have what's called sandboxing session for all of my tech hosts. And if that's something you want to come to, I'll put a link in the follow-up email. It's I charge for it, but you can all come for free. So we can do that then too. So these are great. This is going to be good for me as the trainer to know what your high bars and low bars are. But I want to jump right into drawing. But in the meantime, does anybody have like a burning, I got to say what my high bar or low bar is? And if for some reason you need to drop off at the top of the hour, I completely understand. So I've taken a picture of this, and I will share that out with everyone.
Did you create that motion video of the pole vaulter?
Yeah, actually, no, I pulled it off of the pole vaulter. Let me see if I can go back. I pulled that off of Envato Elements. So it was just a little video.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that.
That's
And then, yeah. And then what I did is, if you notice this graphic, the next graphic, oops, come on. The next graphic, see this bar right here? I took out the pole vaulter in Procreate. I took a screenshot, and then I put in this other bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just geeking out a little bit. So what you may have noticed in some of my handouts is sometimes I have a 4D appreciative inquiry model. This is the one that I drew back in 2011 when I first started using appreciative inquiry in my work. And then the present one is the 5D appreciative inquiry model, which you should have a copy of, but I'm also going to give you a link in a follow-up email of a bunch of resources. So one or the other doesn't really matter. I use this one on the left for a very long time to take into meetings. Now I use the one on the right just because it's cleaner. There's not as many words, and I know what I need to ask, but they're both really great guides. So now I'd love for you to grab a pencil or something to write with, even your colors if you have them, and some paper, and we're going to do a draw along. And I'm also going to share with you sort of just a high level view of what we're going to be doing over in the next couple of weeks, because this is not just about, I got to find the right camera here again. Okay, great. So you may have seen this graphic as I was advertising for the class. And this particular graphic, literally everything on here has meaning. So today we're going to cover these icons and discover, I really see this first part as this was your pre-work. This is some of the work that we've already done, gathering information, maybe research for the class. Maybe you read up on the different principles and things like that. Now we're going to, in the discovery phase, in the actual discovery meeting, I use these icons. In the next session where we talk about dream, I'm going to teach you, and we've already talked about high bar, low bar, but I'm going to show you how I use these other graphics. And so these little graphics actually mean things, and you can use these either as they are right out of the box, or as templates. You can customize them yourself to help harvest for the desired outcomes. Then in the design phase, and this is why I have so many office hours, because I really want us to dive in deep with the types of design we're doing for the meetings to make them customizable for you. We go over logistics, we talk about process, we talk about the energy in a meeting and how to bring it up, how to bring it deeper. And then what do we do and what kind of graphics do we use in plenary, in breakouts, and small groups? And then in the deliver session, we're really going to be talking about those delivery formats. So when I give a design meeting, and if you haven't already seen a video about that, I have a whole video on how I conduct a discovery meeting. I use this whole template as a way to gather and harvest the information that I need to write the SOW. But now I just want to focus just in that discovery section, and you don't have to use this page. You can use just a blank piece of paper, that's fine. I want to go over some of the icons that I use. And so one of the things that I do, so I'm going to pull out some of my markers here. I have a variety of colors for me. And one of the most popular things that I draw are the people. Now you can certainly draw a stick figure, but I'm going to draw, this might look a little funny. I'm going to draw, and you can watch, and then I can draw it again. And I drew this side. So this is a silhouette of a person standing. And so starting with the head, I'm making just a bit of a half circle, a shoulder. I come down for the arm, come in to the leg, draw the leg, and then a foot. And this is like a base that they're sitting on. And so I draw this, and then I'll draw the other side. And this is just a mirrored image, because Neuland, the markers that I use, and we can get into that in a office section, office hours, they make a sticky note that looks like a person. And this is really cool for in-person meetings, because now you can write the person's name and what they do on there and use that as different ways to show, what department they're in, what stakeholder are they? Do you want to do a graphic history kind of thing? So that's how I just draw a person, but you can draw a person lots of different ways. Another thing that I like to draw, because people will start talking about a project, and then they'll instinctively start talking about when it happened. And so then I want to draw a timeline. So if I'm going to draw a timeline, I just draw a horizontal line. I usually, you can make these lines diagonal or vertical. I usually go at a diagonal, because even if I draw a vertical, eventually one of them won't be totally straight, right? And so I might split it up into areas. There might even be little bitty areas. This can also be a unit of measurement. So put a yellow background behind here, and now you've got a ruler, right? But this is just a simple timeline. And so this is where you've got down a basic. Notice I drew it in gray. I drew it in a lighter color, so it kind of recedes to the background, but it also gives us some structure to talk around. And there you might put a person, so-and-so came, and then draw the year under here, right? So this might be your year underneath, kind of thing. And sometimes I'll even draw either an arrow, if it's like this end might be an arrow, or 3 dots to say this is going to continue on. Now, whether you're going on a timeline or on a map, you might have to draw like a placeholder or a marker. So a marker is like, think of the Google Maps marker. All that is just an upside down teardrop. And you can leave it like it is. You can fill it in. Or if you want to give it a little bit more recognition, you can draw a circle in it. But here's my recommendation. This is a pro tip. Draw the circle pretty big, because by the time you fill the rest of it in, that circle is going to get really tiny. So draw the circle big and then fill in around it, and chances are it's going to get smaller. And that can then, be related to a place on a map, or, a sense of space. Sometimes I might even, if I'm doing sketch notes or something, I might draw a little line. It could be straight, it could be wiggly. And then under here, I could maybe write some bullet points. So maybe I want to make sure, if I'm writing a whole list of things, hey, we want to just mark this spot, I might have something like the title might be up here. And then there might be some key points that I draw under it. And just to keep that red theme going, I might make the little bullets circles or check marks or X's. You can choose any of those. So notice I'm not doing anything too complicated here, but these visuals can help me remember what it is I'm writing down when I'm speaking to the client. So when I'm in a discovery meeting, I'm doing this. I'm literally writing these things down. These are my notes. Now, sometimes I'm doing it just for myself and the client can't see it. If I'm online, then I'm just doing it on my iPad or a piece of paper like this. If I'm in front of the client and I don't want them to see me, I'm doing it in a sketchbook or on a clipboard, or I might be doing what Makeda's doing and I might be drawing on the wall. I might have a piece of paper or a really large piece of paper. Like right now I'm working on 11 by 17 or A3 size. I might let them see it. It's fine. So the next thing is people love to share their ideas, right? And we all know that a light bulb is a really great way. It's also boring for graphic recorders, but there's a couple of different ways to draw a light bulb. And I'm going to show you that. You can literally draw a circle. Notice I'm doing it in gold and yellow, and I'm just filling it in. You can make it look kind of like a teardrop shape, like what we did with the marker, but maybe soften it up a bit. Or you can go all out and say, I'm going to make it look like a traditional light bulb, which is fine. But I will tell you, sometimes I just draw a circle and I'm good. It's the details that you put into it next, which you can use a black marker to put in the filament. And the filament can be as easy as like a V, just have two little things there. It could also be a curlicue. Love that one. That's fun. And it can go either way. And then if I'm doing it really fast, I literally just draw like 3 little lines under it. And this last one should be maybe a little bit smaller. That's super simple. But if you want to show that maybe it's just one big idea and you have a little bit of time to spend on it, you might draw something a little bit more detailed. All I've done there is this first line just shows like that's the part that it screws into. There's the base, and then you've got this little element that helps the electricity flow. These are some of the key points. Another one is a cloud. So this might be a thought. So maybe an idea, it could be a light bulb, but a thought is going to be maybe a cloud. And so I usually start, you can start big or small. I'm going to start on the left here, and I'm just going to draw a half circle. And then I'm going to draw a little tiny half circle. And then I'm going to draw a big half circle, another tiny one, and then another big one. And then you can either finish the bottom like you did sort of the top, or sometimes, this is air, so I just add a little bit of a wave. So my clouds look like this when I draw them. And again, what I'm thinking is half circle, small, big, and then a wave. And then again, this can just be a thought. You can put text in it. However, one of the biggest rules is write your text first and then put your container around it. But if I'm writing with a really light color, like this light blue or even a gray, I can write my text and it can go over the color, as long as it's not competing too much. There's not too much contrast there. And then the final thing, which is a little bit more complicated, we're going to do a little perspective drawing here, is what is the product, right? Maybe they're talking about a finished piece, a product or they might use the word, we want to ship this kind of thing. So we're going to draw a box. We're going to make it look like sort of like an Amazon box. So you're going to start by drawing a diamond, and you can do it this way. You can draw like an upside down V, make it really wide, and then just mirror that. So that means that the second line that you drew over here, you're going to mirror that. And the first line you drew, you're going to mirror that and parallel that. So you're mirroring this way, and then you're making those lines parallel. And then you're going to make 3 lines that are the same length. This is going to go down a little bit lower because this line is lower. And then this will be the same length as the first one. Got it? And then you can just connect them. Now, this marker is a little bit big. So I'm going to switch to a slightly smaller pin, and I'm going to draw what looks like tape. Literally going to just make these lines in here parallel, have this come down a little bit. I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to do it again. And notice I'm now going to follow these perspective lines to finish off my tape. So it looks like the tape came over the side and down and stopped, and then is going down and it's going to go under. So you literally learn perspective in like a minute. So what kind of questions do you have about these simple icons? See, drawing's not so bad. I don't really subscribe to the idea that people say anybody can draw. It's like, yeah, you kind of have to get over the head part of it, right? First, you know, and I'm not here to teach you drawing. You can certainly go take a drawing class, but if you just need a couple of icons, these are a great way to start your icon library. It doesn't just have to happen in the discovery meeting. You can use them anytime. So now what I'd like to do is just remind you some of our upcoming dates.
Heather, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So you have 2 cameras, right?
Yes, I have 2 that I'm using right now.
Okay, so I'm not all that tech savvy. You have 2 computers?
Nope, just one computer.
1 computer, 2 cameras.
I have my integrated camera. So just like you, the camera that's on my computer. And then I have, this is called an IPVO. It's a document camera. And this is something we can dive deep. If you can make time on those office hours, those are Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Now, they're from 1 to 2:30 Mountain Standard Time. So whatever your time is now, it's 12 o'clock my time. So whatever time it is now, think about that conversion. So in the office hours, this is where I can seriously dive deep into technology. I'm happy to answer those questions, appreciative inquiry or visuals. You want to draw something? Let's draw it together.
So everybody just kind of steps in, and then you like a session like this, and we can throw questions at you or something.
Yeah. So the open office hours is whoever shows up, whenever you show up. If you want to show up at 2 because you only have a half an hour, that's fine. If you have 15 minutes, come in and say, I got 15 minutes, then we'll prioritize you, right? But if you want to stay the whole hour and a half, that's great. I can't guarantee that. I probably won't record those. This one's being recorded. I won't record those, however, because those are just like you time. And if it's just you and me, then you get a 1-to-1. Just want to remind you the upcoming sessions on Saturdays. As you can see, these were really, I would like to think that they were pretty hands-on, and I want to thank you all for your participation. But if for some reason you can't make a Saturday, don't worry. These are going to be recorded and you'll have access to them. Okay. All right. It's top of the hour. Any other questions before we sign off?
Thank you so much. This is amazing.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm like going, oh my God, okay.
Is it because you learned something that you didn't know? Like, okay, I'd love to hear your
you know
takeaways.
What? I'm fascinated by you because you, even the little icons you draw, I'm like having difficulty doing that.
Well, I did them very quickly. So don't fret.
But what I like about it is that you give a third dimension to, if I have to do something by Zoom or something, it makes it kind of interesting. And what it does is it interrupts the intellect and brings in the creative soul into this whole thing.
Yeah, that's why I say it's engaging, effective, and equitable. Those are my 3 big words. Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions or key takeaways?
I'm impressed that I can draw some icons already.
Yes. Yes. Good.
I appreciated the the focus on appreciative questions from open-ended questions, which as a facilitator, open-ended questions, are part of the bread and butter for how drawing the group toward their own insight. But shifting it, those felt much more like give me an answer, but they were very positive. So I'm kind of playing with that difference between, where open-ended questions or appreciative, positive, unconditionally positive questions,
Mhm.
utilized.
Yeah, good, good. Yeah. Hopefully you're going to be thinking about the next time you ask a question, you're going to be like, ooh,
Oh,
I can tweak
constantly.
this.
I already
Yeah.
ordered those books. While you put it up there, I ordered them and then while you had the slide up. So
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good. All right. Anybody else? Key
Yeah,
takeaways, appreciations? Yeah.
for me, I find it also very like whole, because in a way the contents are very interesting, and I think you're bringing the contents and also the way, the how, no, you're bringing us
Yeah.
tools around the how, and doing it live, and we are experiencing that, and that's so wonderful.
Yeah, good.
And also the connection part with other professionals, it's so exciting.
Yeah, you're going to have a chance to do more of that too. So we've got really incredible, talented people. We got I think 3 or 4 other people that are also signed up that couldn't make it today. So hopefully they'll get to join us in the upcoming sessions so that we can really continue to learn from one another. So I don't have all the answers, and I know some of you have a lot more experience in some of these aspects than I do. So I'm really going to be leaning on you to bring your expertise too. So. All right. I will follow up with an email probably by Monday. I've got a couple of other things going on this weekend, but you'll have access to this recording. I'll give you a link to the resources, some of the resources and some more resources that I've shared today. And just want to invite you to these office hours, because I think that's where some really want to dig into the how and also customize for your needs. There's not one right way to do this. There are so many exciting ways to keep these meetings engaging. Yeah, great. All right. Well, we'll see you on Wednesday, if not next week. Thank you, everyone.